Let's see, I don't see everyone quite yet. Okay. Mhm. Okay, folks, I have it at 6 o'clock, and tonight is October 28th at 6 p.m. I'm calling to order the board meeting of the HUUSD School Board. My name is Caitlin Hollister, and I'm the chair of the board. Normally, we would be going right into our regular meeting schedule, but this evening I will be asking for an executive session shortly, and the board will be exiting this Zoom. I did want to indicate to those participants or attendees who are here with us, we will be back, and this meeting will stay open, so you'll know when we are on return. And we are live streaming this on our YouTube channel, which is HU Web App, and it also is available there as a recording. And Mad River TV also will be broadcasting this evening. So that is my intro for this evening. Right now, I would be asking for a motion from a board member to enter executive session. And as stated on the agenda, the recommendation is to move to executive session with Attorney Pietro Lynn, Superintendent Bridget Neese, and Director of Finance Michelle Baker for the purpose of negotiations/labor relations agreements with employees, because doing so in public session will clearly place the public body at a substantial disadvantage.
I'll move, Caitlin.
Second.
Thank you. Second. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Okay. With that, I'm going to ask folks on the board to exit this Zoom and to check your email. And I will be hitting send now so that you will have a different link to follow for the executive session. Again, attendees, you can stay on or join again around 6:30, 6:40, and we will be back. Thank you. Okay, folks. I think we are back and we are resuming in open session now at 6:43 p.m. So for those of you who just joined us, thank you again for joining us this evening for our HUUSD board meeting. Before we move into public comment, I had a request this evening for a moment of silence. As we all know, this has been a year of tremendous loss in many ways in our communities, both at personal level and in a much more greater community and global scale. And as many of you know, there was also an individual loss this week. Mariah McGill, a resident of Waitsfield and a parent at the Faiston School, died this week in Waitsfield. And we mourn her loss, and we want to send our condolences and sympathies to her family this evening. So I would request a brief moment of silence in her memory. Thank you. This evening, to resume the rest of our business this evening, I would invite public comment. For those of you who would like to offer a public comment for up to 3 minutes, you can raise your hand or hit *9 if you're calling in on the phone. Okay, I see Matt Lillard. Go ahead, Matt. You'll need to unmute first. Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. First, I just wanted to thank the board for confirming the resolution last meeting to move forward with the 7th and 8th grade merger at Crossbrook. I think it's a great move, as some know, especially old board members. I've been a proponent of that for some time. I would obviously like to see it sooner, and that's why I'm commenting tonight. I'm a parent of a 6th grader who has made the choice that is hopefully will be granted to go to Crossbrook next year. And really the main reason is I don't believe that there's an equitable education between Harwood Middle School and Crossbrook Middle School. Doing the research, there are certain programming issues that you simply can't get at Harwood that you can get at Crossbrook. There's lack of a general music program at Harwood. If you look at the amount of time that students actually spend in their core classes, while it might seem like a small couple of minutes every week or every day, that adds up to almost 3 weeks of instruction in core classes that students who go to Harwood Union Middle School are not getting compared to their counterparts in the same school district in the state of Vermont, right down the road at Crossbrook Middle School. There are other issues like the ski program, which I feel strongly about. We live in Vermont. We live in this great place. We have these great resources. That's not available at Harwood Union Middle School, where it is across it. And there are other instances, and I really just implore the board to seriously consider why we've got 2 middle schools having such just different educations, and why that is, and how we can fix it, and how we can fix it soon. Because I believe that we saw a lot of people choose it last year that were not rewarded. I think that trend is going to continue. I only know anecdotally from a couple of people I've spoken to that are making that choice, and the other thing is there's no bus to Crossbrook. If that was offered, what would choice actually look like then? Right now, the only people that can really choose are the people that have the wherewithal to get there. And it's not fair to everybody to not even have that choice. It's not fair to those that get left behind at Harwood Middle School because of that. And it's not equitable for those that want to make the choice and it isn't granted. So I encourage you to, if you're not going to merge sooner than later, 23, while a laudable goal is great, but it doesn't fix the inequities that exist now. And I think those need to be fixed, and they need to be fixed before the next school year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Anyone else this evening? Okay. Before we move on, I do want to address, and after any public comment, if there is a technical detail that I just want to make sure that we have on the record. The issue of general music came up last week, and Bridget, I'm wondering if you can speak to that, because I know we did hear from a teacher who was concerned that the information shared was not quite accurate about the offerings.
You know, Caitlin, I can't because I don't know that specifically in my head, so I'm not prepared to speak to that. I know that they are different. I believe that some people think they're equivalent. If the board really wants to take up the specificity of differences between Crosset Brook and Harwood Union Middle beyond what was put into the document, I strongly recommend that you bring Dwayne and Tom here so that you can ask them your own very specific questions about those calculations.
No, fair enough. I just wanted to make sure that if that was a glaring omission that we addressed it. Okay.
I'm
Thank
not
you all.
totally sure I agree with the position that that teacher had written. I don't have it before me, so I'd rather not comment. Thanks.
Fair enough. Got it. Oh, all right, folks. So thank you again. Right now, we will be moving on to approving tonight's agenda. Are there any objections to approving tonight's agenda? Okay. Hearing none, we will consider the agenda approved, and we will go on to our first discussion topic this evening, which is related to our pre-K to 12 planning, specifically following up on last week's action item. As you saw in our leadership report, Tari and I have offered an outline of next steps in the spirit of the motion, which was to move forward with implementation. And what we have suggested involves 3 components. One is continuing to provide background information and get us all up to speed. We do have an extensive document that's really a collation of many other documents and meeting minutes that Tari's been working on and that we're going to get out to you as soon as we can. The second component would be defining the decisions ahead, specifically around the facility. And we included a chart around some of those decisions for what, if any, addition might be made, how it might be paid for, and what will really, at the very basics, what kind of change to the building, if any, might happen. So along with that, our suggestion was that we think about 2 subcommittees of the board, one to take up these facilities questions specific to Crosset Brook, and another to take up communications. So that is our overview in terms of, again, moving forward with implementation, again, with getting the board and the public the necessary information, and continuing to get very specific about the board level decisions that would need to happen. My request tonight would be to hear from board members specifically on thoughts on this process as we've laid it out. So as you comment, I'd be curious to hear that. And then if you would be interested in joining one of these 2 teams, either the facilities team or the communications team, which we would not expect to be a heavy lift of many meetings, but perhaps 1 or 2 to get started. I am going to indicate that if we start diving into the question of whether to merge, I am going to likely interrupt and move us on, because the focus this evening is taking an action that was made last week and, again, moving forward with it. What Tari and I want to make sure is that the process that we're offering around that policy decision is one that the board feels will allow us to move forward effectively. So I hope that makes sense. And I would look for folks to indicate if you would like to weigh in. Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a clarifying question. And how do we communicate what our plans are for the high school? I mean, I think, we had the pre-K through 12 plan, we put that in abeyance because of COVID. We crossed this bridge last meeting to move forward with a merger, with the sort of implication being now the high school was free and clear to move forward. And this level of planning seems to be a little bit ahead of addressing the high school. I mean, if we're really going to, use this timeline, what can we say immediately about getting to work on the high school, which I think we're all in agreement has been maybe neglected the most in all of this.
Thank you. That's very well said, Tim. Thanks for raising that. Christine?
Yeah, I was actually going to second what Tim said, because it did occur to me that, whatever structural, the facilities that we need over at Crossett Brook, those kind of go hand in hand with what we're supposed to be doing at Harwood. And if the idea is that now we're kind of freeing things up to move the Harwood board bond along. And I'm not saying set this aside, but why wouldn't we maybe have that other part of the facilities committee going, or why wouldn't they be picking up that work in addition to doing the Crossett Brook stuff?
Great.
And I'm happy to do whatever.
And I think hearing this too, I think there's been interest at many points of let's build on where there is strong consensus. And if we can come out with some work where the board is really unified around that high school, I think that would serve us and our students well. Lisa?
Yeah, I'd really encourage us to involve, as Bridget said, involve Dwayne and Tom from the start. I think inviting them to a meeting and being able to ask pointed questions, and also here, I know that they did start the process of gathering the information that we asked for, and they weren't able to complete it, but they started it, and there might be some valuable information that they've gathered to update us past what we've gotten in the past. And so I think it'd be a smart starting place for us.
Great, thank you. And if there are folks who are interested in being part of these teams, whether it's a facilities team that works both on some high school specific and some 7-8 specific questions, that's one task. And then whether it's some communications work, that's another. Teresa?
You're on mute.
I hear the clicking. I'm not sure if it's from her trying to unmute or not. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, thanks. I think we should consider getting a new NASDAQ or something enrollment study, just to determine what the size would be. We have changed pretty dramatically since, I believe, 2017 was the last study that the numbers were based on, particularly in our high school. And I know we're talking about merging the middle schools here, but a lot of our numbers were done on a different denominator. So, it could be good for us, could mean maybe we don't need a bond, or we need less of a bond or something like that. So I would encourage us to update our numbers based on the most recent information.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, I was just saying that I would be willing to be on the facilities committee.
Is it hard to hear for others?
Yeah, he's really quiet.
You're not on mute, but it's faint.
Just saying that I would be on the facilities committee.
Great. Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, volunteer for the facilities committee if you want. Probably not the best communications person, but facilities I could do.
Sweet, thank you. Christine?
I'm happy to, I don't know where Rosemarie and Alex stand, but knowing that I've been on facilities so I could provide some continuity, I'm willing to do that as well. And I just wanted to put in, I think, and Michelle can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we got updated enrollment projections last fall. So they might have changed from last fall to this fall, but they're more recent than 2017.
And we have engaged in NASDAQ to update our enrollment projections this spring.
Okay. Thank you. That's great, Michelle. Alex?
I'm happy to, help out on a facilities committee, whichever is helpful. I think it's probably good to have people who've read through all this information multiple times. So I'm happy to help however I can.
Just to clarify, what we originally were talking about here was just a facilities committee related to the middle school at Crossett Brook. It wasn't the whole thing. So maybe, I'm not sure if you guys, like Alex and Christina, are you thinking high school stuff too, or just middle school? Is that okay with you?
Either way is fine with me. I mean, we did a lot of middle school stuff on the bond already, so I'm happy to do whatever everybody decides we need.
One thing that we could do is use some input from folks this evening and then come back with a draft charge next week for that committee so that it is, specific enough to lead to the kind of work that we need to get both around the high school and around the 7-8. And if the board is interested in taking up that high school facilities work first, then that committee would address that piece first, or if it really needs to be hand in hand, I would suggest that we
it could be two groups too
at the next meeting. Yeah, or two groups, right? Or a high school specific group and a 7-8 specific group.
It would seem to me that they are just two distinctly different projects, and we may actually reap some benefit in jumping on some of the high school improvement challenges, which seem to have consensus and certainly demonstrate that we're getting someplace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd participate in high school only.
Okay. Is there anyone who feels strongly that the I guess what I'm hearing is high school first. Is there anyone who feels differently about that? Please say so. I don't want to go down that too quickly. Tari?
I would prefer to see us add like a fourth category here, which is some like a high school facilities committee that's working, at the same time in tandem, but in an effort to not be rushed and to sort of have plenty of time to get clarity, I'd rather not like delay either one, but we have a number of people who are willing to do some thinking about and have some expertise. So I think we could maybe support two small groups doing some at least next steps planning. And then once we have specific tasks, maybe broaden it out. Should I try adding a fourth thing right now for further discussion, or do we want to wait till the end of this discussion to do something like that?
I think you can put that up there just to keep the visuals helpful for me. I'm going to see Alex, then Jonathan, then Christine.
I mean, it's fine to separate them out. I think that everybody will, as soon as we start it, figure out that it's hard to talk about one without the other. So I don't think we should try to do them one at a time, because I think we'll end up with questions that are unanswered that way. So I think either it has to be one group or you have to be doing them in tandem so that two groups can communicate. Otherwise, we're going to end up all tangled up, I think. So,
Jonathan?
You could have two separate groups because we're both working with the same concept of which students are going to be at which school. And so I don't necessarily think it's as tangled as it was when you're looking at like a K through 12 plan, and the configuration depends. We kind of have this merger happening. So I agree with Tari. I think two separate small groups is the way to go. And that would delay neither of them, because I think they're both important.
Thanks. Christine?
Yeah, I don't want to delay either of them either, and because they're both important, but also because I think we'd want to just be going to bond for one number. So it would make sense to have the number for each of them, and we can combine them for one single bond question. But maybe it would make sense to have like two groups, and they can both sit down together at the outset to kind of review together what's been done, and then go off and separately do their work. just so we don't want either group working in a vacuum, but they don't necessarily need to be working together. It's just my thought.
Thanks. So I heard Tim interested in high school. I heard Alex, Christine, Michael, Jonathan interested overall. Is that correct? Okay. Again, I think my instinct would be to come back next week with some draft charges to address the, both the middle school and the high school priorities. And using the background information that we have. But if there's any further guidance that you'd want to give at this time in terms of just that organization of committees, this would be the time to do so.
I'd probably be more interested in the middle school group.
Thanks, Jonathan.
High school, party one.
Alex,
Come
go
on.
ahead.
We're gonna, Tim, your committee's going down.
Rivals. Go ahead, Alec.
Yeah, I'll volunteer for the high school.
Great.
Yeah.
Sit up.
Joining Tim's team. You guys can have your finance committee meeting and then have this one right now.
We're looking for Rose right now.
What? Did he say Rose? I'll help. I'll help with the high school too.
Michael, are you okay with middle school?
I'll take whichever team will willing to have me. I feel like last kid picked or something, but yeah, whoever wants me.
Great. Let's see, Christine or Alex, do you have preferences?
I don't care. Wherever you need people, you can, doesn't matter to me.
I'm the same.
Okay. Other thoughts? This feels like progress. And I would be really excited to come out of this meeting hearing that our board has many enthusiastic people wanting to work on these projects and wanting to prioritize our high school and our middle school and our high schoolers and our middle schoolers of the future. So even if we're communicating just that in our recap, I think that's progress and that's exciting. All right. I'm going to move us on unless I hear otherwise. Okay. So the next piece in our agenda this evening is enrollment. And we had an extensive report from Bridget and her team this week. And so I wanted to encourage folks first to share any questions you have for Bridget, and we can hear. Yeah, anyways, let's start with questions. I think I would start then, Bridget, with a question. Was there anything, or what were the elements that were most surprising to you and your team in looking at this data?
Oh, there I am. We were both clicking at the same time.
Oh.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. I mean, what I would say honestly is there's nothing here that's a surprise. And what I mean by that is this is data that I live in. Michelle lives in it. Enrollment is very fluid. It changes every single day. People up, people down, moving in, moving out, people changing choices. So it's something that we're very familiar with. And I wouldn't say that anything jumped off the page because we probably know the story behind, most of the numbers. So, I think we can kind of walk through it if people don't have very particular questions. I tried to incorporate the prior questions into these graphs and grids. So I think when you start, you're looking at, we just popped out, 3 years of enrollment. The gray boxes at the top, the first graphs really show you the kids that we have enrolled in school. So as the note says, these are kids in the remote academy, and these are kids that are attending every day. These are our kids, and this shows you the differences. We're about 96, I think, students less in 2020 overall than we were in 2018. We're 82, I guess I didn't do that right, 1682. We're about, from last year, 1668 to 1586 in total, we have 82 less. So let's start there. We have 82 less kids, all things said and done, all the move-ins, all the move-outs, all of the early college, all of the kids in IDC, we're 82 students less. Moving on down, this is a new data point that I've started to collect, and I think it might in the future behoove us to also look at a grade 1 comparison to a 12th grade graduating class. And that's because preschool is all over the map. You almost cannot find trends and patterns in that. It starts to stabilize in kindergarten, but there's still quite a bit of movement in kindergarten, and then it stabilizes even further in grade 1. So you can see here that we had 108 graduating seniors last year, and we backfilled it, if you will, with kindergartners that are 113. We're also looking at pre-K numbers to see like who's coming up the pipeline that'll likely be in our schools. And you can see that we have approximately, I think we have 11 less PK students all overall enrolled. Then moving on down, we start to answer those questions that I think you have asked, which would be how many kids moved in, how many were from out of state, and how many were from in-state. And you can see that 61 students moved in, and you see the division there between in and out. And reasons why students were, we did start to ask this year based on feedback we got from the board, reasons why you moved in and reasons why you moved out and reasons why you've signed up for IDC. So that data is in its early stages because we just started after the conversations you had at your board last year to start asking, but you can see some of that. The transfer out data, the next graphs where we're talking about the transfer out. Again, we have a high rate of students in early college. You see we have 22. I thought that was very helpful that Caitlin included the link for Lamoille South because we're a lot like Lamoille South, both in the number of campuses we have. They are different in that they have 2 high schools in their district, but for comparisons, size-wise, it's always a good look-see, and we really don't look very different much than the numbers that they had. So we have 22 kids in early college. We have 52 students that are homeschooling, and you can see I added in the written piece down below to give you a point of reference. Last year we had 11. So COVID has definitely moved a lot of students into a home study program that we would anticipate will return, and principals know those families and have those conversations. So we're expecting the majority of the 52 kids, albeit maybe 15, not to that they will return. They're still with us locally. So 22 early college, 52 homeschool, and then 31 moved out of the district. So that's the vast majority of the 136 that you see as the grand total of the out-migration data. And then you can see the number of kids in each grade that went to private school as a choice, or we have high school choice 9 to 12. You can see in and out. And that looks pretty much like what I would tell you is a typical year. Down below, you can see HURA is our remote academy. We started, the original number I believe was 157 when we first set it up and had kids, families select, and that we were about 157. And then once we got rocking, people changed their minds. And I think we're at about 134 when we opened the academy. And then since then, some people have changed their minds, and folks can choose to go back into school, but not back and forth into and then back to the remote academy. So that's the way that is set up. But right now, we're counting at 117 students that are in the remote academy, including 4 of them that are from Granville and Hancock in the remote academy. Down below, I thought my team did. I was really proud of the work that they did here in the color-coded graph where you're really looking at each school building, and you can see Faison's at the top, and then we go down there color-coded for you. And you can see here the what would be all of the possible resident students. And then from there, how many are continuing IDC year to year to year, how many new ID students went out, and then how many new and continuing came in. You can see what those numbers look like. You can see the number of tuition students in each school, and then the breakout of how many are actually in the academy and how many are actually physically in our buildings this year. And of course, that's the last column that you're looking at there, all the way down through the high school and the middle level. Then you see the some other summary data about the students that are actually in the building attending and how many are in HURA across the district and what that looks like. So inside, and then we get into IDC. So we move on down into the intra-district choice data. And this is, you know, continuing new numbers here. Each of these graphs tries to sell one piece of the story to the graphs at the top. And you have to be really careful because they only tell one piece of the story. So they have to get integrated in order to sort of see the totals. But one of the things we did was look at just this year's IDC because we had just started asking the question of why did you choose IDC? So these 2 graphs are representing that of the respondents. So up above, it tells you of the people that responded in IDC at Crossett Brook, you know, what they said and so on and so forth. And you can see the reasons listed down below. And that's the sum total of the story, if you will, about enrollment. Who are our kids? Where are they? And where are they going? And some why.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just noticing, you know, this is a that's a pretty significant drop with 82. I'm just trying to make sense of these numbers. But so you have 82 less students, but you also had when you have the homeschool number, I guess that is that's 52 students that may return.
Mm-hmm.
But so I guess that would be a drop of about 30 this year as compared, if you include the homeschool students and you assume that they're going to return, a drop of about 30 total as compared to a drop of 14 last year. Do you feel like that this is a putting all these together, is this an anomalous year? I was expecting there to be a little bit more of a balance, or we had so many. I mean, that's a pretty large number of students moving in. At least that's what, you know, in terms of the real estate, that's what's been happening. I was expecting there to be a little bit more balancing out. I just didn't know if you had any comment on that.
I think it is an anomaly. You know, I don't know that we can put sort of that much into it. When we give you the NASDAQ report and Michelle does the piece for budget, we usually look 10 years back, Jonathan, and then 10 years forward. So there's the prediction and then there's the reality of what it's looked like over the 10-year period. And, you know, I have questions myself and how much this data might skew that data going forward, because it is truly such an unusual year of movement. I mean, there's just all kinds of movement, right? So in terms of the net to what you're asking, yes, 61 students moved in, right? But we also had just alone 31 move out of district. So how much of that was directly related to folks losing their job, you know, moving in with family elsewhere, and that sort of a thing, that they moved out of the district. So of the 60, we had 61 move in, but 31 moved out of the district. Plus you have the number of students that are in homeschooling. So those two numbers, the number of folks that moved out of the district and the homeschooling number, stand out to me. A number of students going to private school looks typical as to what most years would sort of look like. And the early college number, it's been peaking up a little bit each year because more kids take advantage of that benefit. But that's also becoming a pretty stable number at this point. So yeah, I think that was not a surprise, but maybe a little bit of a disappointment, because we had hoped with the number of kids that moved in that we would have seen a less of a decline. But nonetheless, 82 kids less is about 4 classrooms. If you look at it that way, at least 4.5 classrooms of students. And that's at, 18, 19, 20 kids in a class. That's between 4 and 5 classrooms of kids that we've lost this year.
Thank you.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at those Lamoille data, that they had a decrease of 81 students also, which is pretty similar to us, which and similar 39 enrolling in private schools there, and 18 in early college. So I mean, it sounds like our numbers are actually pretty consistent with the our sort of sister district that you would assume would have similar kind of influx of students too. So I mean, I think that's helpful just in thinking about our numbers, anomaly or not. It may be a statewide anomaly, unless you live in southern Vermont, where I think they've had a huge influx. But
Thanks.
I think one of the other data points that is worth noting is that we have 78 families that take the option of IDC. So I know you're going to want to talk in the future a little bit more about IDC. So I think that's important. And that's with a freeze this year, if you will, at the 7-8, because we could not take those other 18 students to cross it. If we would have added the 18 students to cross it, right, then you'd be looking at 106 families that take that option for their child. And I think that's important to know.
Teresa?
Bridget, first of all, thank you. And thanks to everybody who worked on this. I thought this was really comprehensive and very well done. So I do appreciate it. Thank you. And I know anything related to the COVID sort of impact on enrollment has been answered in this. So really comprehensive. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
My comment, it's less of a question, more of a comment, is more for the board. I mean, we're at a position now where we've got fewer than 500 students in the high school. We've had fewer than 500 for a while. We're dropping down to 450, and if you look at the high school, we on average, if you include the early college, the last 5 years we've gone down something like 20% between a graduating class graduating and their 8th grade year, and so I think we should be, as a board, it's one of the things that I put on the agenda request, Caitlin, and this is kind of what I think we need to get into, is for, what is the long-term determination of our high school? Are we actively going to try to retain the students in the high school? Or are we going to say, okay, that's going to working? As Bridget pointed out, early college kids, more and more kids are taking advantage of that. So how do we as a board create the policies and think about our planning and our investment in the high school to accommodate for those kind of things? That's a big question that I kind of have. And even if you look without early college, a lot of kids in the last 5 to 7 years have moved out between 9th and 10th grade. Our current 11th graders, something like 18 of them left between 9th and 10th grade. And so, and you can see that in the trends. And so I want to just kind of call it out. I feel like as we're looking, and especially before we really dig into bond, I think we really want to think about the student outcomes that we're trying to do and a focus on retention. And I don't think it should just be about maintenance. I think it should be about a very holistic approach, the way we should be thinking about our high school. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Tim?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Bridget, I know that Choice has been open for about a month now and it's got maybe a month more to go. Do you foresee us needing to take a similar stance? Obviously we're months away from evaluating the applications, but what are you thinking is gonna take place with IDC, on the Crossett Brook side of things?
I think you're going to find yourself in the same situation. It's only been open a short time, and I think when I last looked at it, there's 12 families that have 6th graders in the valley that have immediately signed up for IDC to Crossett Brook.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So certainly this doesn't have to be limited to only questions. And Bridget, again, I appreciate the report and the overview. And we continue to have questions, whether of each other, whether of Bridget, but this would be the time to discuss anything related to enrollment and IDC that folks would like to put on the table this evening. Christine?
Sure. I just want to point out, I think one thing that I find interesting is how many more students from Harwood Middle School end up matriculating out or leaving and going out to private schools than we have for Crossett Brook Middle School. I think it's about 4 times the amount, if I got that right. And, thinking about Teresa's point, I know a lot of teachers and a lot of pedagogy talks about how important environment is to the classroom and to the climate and culture of a school. And, it just strikes me, having deferred this Harwood bond for so long, if we haven't caused ourselves some pain in that regard, because I don't know that the building has caught up with current teaching methods. And I think, just the general condition in certain regards in terms of lighting and windows and, things that aren't, that really are in need of maintenance. If we, brought that building up to being what we want it to be in terms of current teaching methods and a more positive environment that really speaks to the quality of education that we want at the school, if that would help us retain some of our students. Because it really, a high school should be a centerpiece of a community. And I'm not sure that as a board, we've really given the message that that's how we feel about it.
Thanks, Christine. Michael?
I just want to share quickly. I was looking back at the NASDAQ report and looking at it seemed like for we were trending the wrong way. So, I agree that we have to figure out the best we can for high school. But last year we had 34 fewer kids than what was projected, and this year 109 fewer. If I count for like 40 of the homeschool coming back, that's 69 fewer. So we're trending in the in the reduced population.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Alex?
Yeah, I guess looking at the IDC numbers and thinking about what Teresa said, if our goal is to keep students and retain them and help families feel like they're getting what they want out of their education, if we have to say no to another 20 IDC students this year. I don't think that's going to further us in our goal of retaining students. So I think we should figure out what we need to do to say yes to the families that want to move schools in our district if our goal is to retain students. I think that needs to be part of our thinking when we're trying to make decisions about what makes our families happy. It sounds like, you know, we weren't able to do that this year. And I think if we continue to not be able to do that, we might start to lose students through that process.
Thanks. Teresa and then Alec.
Yeah, could I just get a point of clarity? Christine, where are you seeing the number that the people who are matriculating out of the high school are coming from the Harwood 7th and 8th? I just don't see it. I mean, so where did you get that number?
Kari's right on that page. 2 kids left Crossett to go to private school, and eight kids left Harwood Middle School to go to private school.
Yeah, but then you also have moving out of the district, 11 from CMBS just moved out of the district. So, and then only 3 from HUMS.
Well,
I mean, if you add them all together, you know, it's like 26 and 7 and 8. I just don't see the same, it's not the same correlation. I don't think they correlate.
Here's another thing I just want to point out, and Bridget, correct me if I'm wrong. This is also based on self-reported information. And I don't know if people were able to select multiple categories. So presumably, and again, Bridget, correct me if I'm wrong, I could have both moved out of the district and not been happy with the district, but I would have just chosen one of those.
I'm almost certain they wrote their response.
Got it. Thank you.
Right, so they could type in anything that they wanted.
Right. So within that, we sometimes got maybe multiple layers of information and maybe just one point of information. So I just wanted to also add that to the complexity of this data.
But I want to be clear, move out of the district means the family moved out of the district. The family no longer lives here. It wasn't the student that, you know what I mean? Like those families moved out of the district. They no longer reside here.
Got it. Okay, Alec, go ahead.
Yeah, the early college number 22, do we have a sense of what the primary motivation for these students to elect the early college route? I mean, I can speak to, you know, conversations where I've had with 3 families, and they're all very different, and be interested in find out really what's the reasons for that.
I think you said it. They're all very different. My understanding from my administrators at the high school is just that they are all very different. That said, I think there are some commonalities. The courses that you take through early college are paid for by the state. They're free. So some kids see that as a real financial incentive for them and their families, and they have a leg up. I think there is some pattern on, you know, they get to kind of toe dip into a college experience and a college course pretty easily. And I think that some of those kids too have already taken AP classes and have exhausted those possibilities. And so they see that as the logical next step, especially in 12th grade.
So as a follow-up, could this be a symptom of where students may not find either the choice, the rigidity, the rigor, or the quality up to a place where they might prefer?
I don't believe that.
Okay.
If you look at Lamoille South, they have 18 students in early college. If you look at other districts our size with high schools, you're going to see a similar same amount. I think that I think it's great that we have students that frankly have achieved in their high school years the requisites to be able to be successful in early college classes. And for many families, that there's a serious financial incentive there. So I just see that as their logical next step in their journey. And it's something that's available, like dual enrollment. Dual enrollment is also another area we're part of Flexible Pathways and helping kids go further. The state initiated both of those programs.
Thanks. Lisa.
Yeah, I think this is all great information. And again, thank you for collecting it. As I think about kind of the next 5, 10, 15 years, I truly agree that the best thing we can be doing is to trying to figure out how to reverse this trend and to, if not mitigate our declining enrollment, at least that, and if not, even trying to reverse it. And so whatever we can do to try to really get to the root causes of why people are coming and going, I think is huge. And the new data we're collecting about why people are coming in and out is great. It would have been nice if we had that for longer. I'm so glad we have it now. So it'll be interesting to see what that says over time. And other things that I can think we can do are like talking to teachers, the people that are on the ground and closest to the problem are also closest to the solution. So they might be able to offer us a really great insight as to what they think is going on with their students. Yeah, I guess in my brain, I'm trying to think of things that we can do to really kind of identify how we can work towards reversing this decline.
Thanks. Other thoughts or questions this evening? Alex?
Could we request that the principals do just ask the early college kids why they made their choices? Could we get that information from them the way we did from the other students? Would that be possible? It just might be helpful information also for us to know. Not because there's anything particularly different about our district than any other, but if there's things that we can do, I mean, in terms of retention, again, if there's things that maybe for some kids, that's a great choice and it allows them this jump on college and there's all sorts of benefits. But if for other kids, they might've stayed and been able to gain something with another year in high school, it'd be nice to know that just so we could offer them what they need.
It might be something that we could consider in the spring as we're thinking about, the data we would need going into next fall. I'm presuming that these students are not on campus right now. I think it's an interesting question to me in terms of, is early college actually something that we want to encourage more students to be doing, or is it something that we would, I don't want to say discourage, but find ways again to keep those students on our campus? I'm not sure. Tim?
Yeah, I just had a question about that early college. Where are those kids? In a typical year, non-COVID year, where are those kids taking their courses? Is it mixed? They're just taking some early classes, kind of AP like, and then the rest of their curriculum is the same, or
State schools.
So they're physically going away from campus.
Yes, they don't count in our ADM.
Is that a potential revenue source for us? Or do they physically have to go and take the class somewhere else? If we're going to have the high school available only to the high school, is there a way to facilitate the program without losing the students outright?
I don't believe so, but if the board as a whole is interested in learning much more about the specifics of how it works with the early college, I think that you would invite the director of guidance from the high school to really be able to do a Q&A with you on that topic.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Caitlin, I've been raising my hand, but I don't think you could see. Sorry.
Oh, good. So let's go to Tari, Christine, Rosemarie, and then we're going to move on.
About the early college thing and even the dual enrollment, it's tricky because I think we do lose those students, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a negative student outcome. Like that might be a great opportunity for our students. And I think something that Harwood has been pretty remarkable about is the Flexible Pathways program and encouraging kids to follow what's best for them and not just what's prescribed for everybody. And so I just want to be careful when we think about early college and having a lot of kids take advantage of that. It doesn't necessarily represent a failure. It may represent providing great opportunities for our kids. It's not to say that we don't have, opportunities for further growth and learning that we can do and understanding why kids make those choices, but we should just be cautious about oversimplifying what the implications of those decisions are.
Yeah, I could weigh in on that. I really think that if the board really wants to understand that it's a story, it's not so simple as serving kids. And I would say I think that it's something to applaud. Now, it doesn't work for you in the constructs of how you fund your school, but you've been able to educate students in a way that they're able to access early college and be successful in that endeavor. And I know that there's many individual reasons why they do that, including some of the course selections that they're offered to them at that point that a high school could never offer all of those. And at the same time, I don't think we should interpret that as a lack of success in rigor in the school. I wrote a letter, a college reference letter for one of our students today. And this particular student, in conjunction with many other things, took 7 AP classes at Harwood Union. That's really quite an accomplishment. There's always room for growth and improvement, but being able to offer more classes when you have declining enrollment, again, something to work on. I think that there's a story, and it's probably different for individuals as to why someone may or may not choose Harwood Union. And it can be as simple as a student, I'll give you an example of a student who is choicing out, whose parent works at another high school, and so has this opportunity to go to the same high school where the parent works. And there are some different offerings there. That doesn't necessarily make Harwood less good. It's just that is another opportunity. There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of flexible pathways in the new ways that kids learn. At the same time, I do think that the board should probably entertain some robust conversations on the facility. And that's not a popular conversation on any level, because people say that people don't judge books by their cover. Yes, they do. And when you have a high school that is clean, it's very clean, but it hasn't been updated and upgraded. And another big component of that is athletics. When you have a track that you can't compete on and you don't have enough field space and other things that you've learned or we've all learned about in the facilities, those kinds of things do enter into why students may go someplace else. So it's all of that, I think, to talk about.
Thanks. Christine?
Yeah, just really quickly, I just want to remember that, a few weeks ago, we were lauding the alternative pathways and saying, well, we should keep them going because they seem to be really popular. And I think it's important that we provide experiences for our students that work for them. And I think there's also an economic piece with early college. I mean, this is an opportunity to get college credits for free. And college is a very expensive proposition in this day and age. And also, quite frankly, I mean, I think some kids they're just ready to be out of high school. I went to one of the top high schools in my state, and if I had early college, I probably would have done it just because I was ready for a different scene. So, it's small town. Sometimes you're ready to move on. Doesn't say much, doesn't necessarily speak to the academic experience. It just might be somebody's looking for a change of scene.
Got it. Thanks. Rosemarie, you're the last one. Last word. Oh, you're on mute though. Mute.
Oh, you want me to unmute? So this is something I guess I'd follow up on what Tim was talking about, because as Teresa mentioned, the enrollment at Harwood we see, going down. the moving of the middle schoolers to Crossett Brook. So it's going to free up some space. We're going to have excess space. And I think thinking of the early college and opportunity and equity, that as we're looking at the high school and considering the space, how could we use that space to maybe either partner with the Vermont State College system, which we all know is struggling financially, or find a way of bringing in some of those early college opportunities to the extra space to allow kids that maybe want to take advantage of early college, but don't necessarily have the means. Their parents can't afford to buy them a car to drive to school, or whatever the reason might be. I think we really need to think outside the box, because we have an opportunity once we bring the middle schools together to upgrade the high school and incorporate how it can best help our students with preparing them for life after high school. I look at this as an opportunity, and I hope we consider that as we're examining our options. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. All right, folks, thank you. And we will continue to get updates as this landscape changes. Our final main discussion item this evening is around anti-racism. And we had our workshop on October 7th. I did follow up with Hal, and at his suggestion sent out a survey earlier this week. Heard from about 8 of you, and indicating, at least I think 5 or 6 who were interested in further workshops. Also some interest on setting goals for the board, for the board's work around anti-racism. So those were some of the themes that are coming out. And also at Hal's suggestion, wanted to have some time now in our open session to reflect on that workshop, share any lingering thoughts, and consider some direction for the board here. So I wanted to open up that conversation, see where it leads this evening. And as this is one of the major strands of our board work this year, this will continue to be an agenda item for us. Depending on where the conversation goes tonight, that can inform how we take this forward, whether with a facilitator like Hal, whether with our full board discussions. We do also have an approved agenda request coming up to discuss the Black Lives Matter flag again. So a lot of interrelated topics, and I want to open that discussion up for further reflection. Okay, Christine, go ahead.
Just in terms of working with him, in terms of setting some goals for the board, was there any thoughts as to direction? Or, I mean, generally my concern is that this is a group that kind of tends to be invested in the status quo. And when you're going to start doing anti-racism work, you're talking about examining structures and change. So I just don't, if we're going to spend time on it, I want it to be fruitful. So I don't know what people were thinking in terms of goals.
And I didn't see from survey responses very concrete goal areas necessarily come out yet. I think the overall theme that I gleaned was interested in continuing the conversations. Lisa?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in continuing the conversations. I think that was a great introduction workshop, but I don't think it's kind of like the first step to anything is starting to do some deep dive into personal reflection, but you don't do the work unless you do the work. So it has to continue somehow. And I think having it led by somebody who can lead us through doing that work is the only way it's going to get done, to be honest. I think he'd be a great resource. I mean, I feel a little bit lost on the whole Black Lives Matters flag being raised. I really want to see it be raised on our campus. And I also want to see it be raised in a way that the school community and, kind of just done the right way. I think a lot of us are kind of questioning like who it's supposed to come from and like how to make it legitimate. He'd be a great resource to kind of help us figure that out. And so why not use him if he's kind of part of our team that's helping us navigate this? So I'd be interested in that conversation.
Thank you, Lisa. Michael.
Yeah, I agree with Lisa there. I've been trying to struggle thinking where we go from here. I know I proposed the flag. I got some feedback that different people, it's not everyone's on the same page, but that, stuff from the students. So what we can do to say and learn for us so that we can say that we are there supporting our students, we're there supporting staff, supporting future staff to move to the district. I'm not sure how to get there, but how we say we're behind you, right? And we'll make it. Some of the stuff that comes along with it is outside of our purview of the saying, administration, please do it, for things like curriculum, right, and specific details inside the school. But so we clear, somehow we can say, yeah, we support what you're doing, and we'll stand behind you, and come to us if you want to.
Thanks, Alex.
So my comments come not having attended his training, so I apologize if this was talked about and I didn't know it, but I would say for me, I would want our goals to be consistent with our 30,000 foot level, to make sure that we have some guidance about how to make sure that we are incorporating his ideas and others into things like our budgeting and our curriculum and the places where we have where we have oversight, to make sure that we are allocating the right amount of money to the right places. Because I think if we're thinking of anti-racism in a systemic way, we have to think about what our role is in that system and where we can get some help in not necessarily making the changes on the ground, but making the changes to the system that will make it easier for the changes on the ground to happen. So, and I don't know who the best person to do that, help us with that is. And if that's him, then great. And if we need a different kind of training from somebody who works more specifically with school boards on anti-racism training, then great also. I mean, whoever we think is the person who can help us with that.
Got it. Thanks. Tari?
I really enjoyed the work with Mr. Colston, and I thought he had great frameworks and thinking for us in that systemic way, as well as nudging us personally. And I don't feel like I know what the next steps are. I like this, the idea of trying to have our conversations at the board table focus around the policies, the systems that we have control over. But I'm not sure how to do that work. But I think we could sort of invite Mr. Colston back. I mean, he works in the legislature, he is a legislator. He's worked with these larger systems and large corporations. And I think he could probably provide us with some guidance about how to do that. So in some ways, I guess I'm sure, I'm not saying let's write a blank check, but an open program or something, or an open invitation to me seems like actually a valuable thing to extend. And also remembering that this is a long-term project for us too. So whether it's working with us on the visioning stuff, which we have slated for the late winter, or something sooner, all of that stuff could be, or maybe it's part of our budget conversation early on when we're trying to set some budget goals. I think the finance committee is coming up with a schedule for that, right? So maybe that could be part of it. Those might be some places where we could ask for some guidance.
Great. Thanks, Tari. Rosemary?
Unmute.
Now you're good.
There we go. So I agree with with Alex as far as continuing the work, but remembering what our role is. I envision that the real work would happen at the ground level with the students and teachers that had started the work. And I think it would be great if we could have Mr. Colston work with them, and then he could help the board guide us in how we can support the boots on the ground group get the work done. Because they're the students and teachers I see as being the most active piece of helping our district in making it more making this more visible, and our role, as Alex had mentioned, we should be the ones who help set the policies and make sure that the resources, the financial resources, are available for that group to be successful.
And I will just remind you that there is some extensive staff training happening all year this year. It's with a different trainer, but with Rebecca Haslam, that started in October, and I think they have at least 4 sessions in the course of the school year. Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks. I found the workshop to be excellent, and I would welcome more of that. And I also feel like it's directly relevant to the work that we're doing, and because we heard, I think Lisa and Tari had some really good points about ways that additional work with Mr. Colston could shine light on topics that we're directly involved with, one being a vote about raising the Black Lives Matter banner, and the other one being whether he has any recommendations for sort of structures and structural racism, and whether there's anything from his perspective that we can do from our bird's eye view of the district. So I think those are really good proposals.
Great, thank you. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I think something that would be valuable for me is just a basic baseline of, we own the system. And so if there's systemic racism to address, mitigate, what have you, how is our school district, our policies and procedures, is there something inherently flawed in the system that we operate? And so from a practical perspective at first, that would be helpful to me to point out. Obviously, I thought the training was okay. It's interesting perspective to try and overlay the history that he shared with us. And so in so doing, I'm trying to understand, how to even relay that, message, right? So that's a message given to us that, here's the genesis of our privilege, shall we say. And so here we are as a school board. We took in the information, there's self-reflection, but we have a vision statement for the, for our district. We're sat here tonight, we're talking about other trainings that are happening, at the school level. I'd like to know what those are. I'd like to know what the training is, because it would be helpful to know what the goal is at the outset. So rather than have some continuum of, why, systemic racism is pervasive, it's, well, we have a school district. This is what we created. Can you help us, navigate why that might fall short, I guess, in some.
Thanks. Teresa?
Sorry, I'm on mute. I agree with all the comments around policy. I did like the workshop, but as you guys know, before we went into it, it's not about us. We're transient. We're not going to be on the board 20 years from now. Racism will still, unfortunately, hopefully much less, but still exist. And so it is about the policies, and it's also, I think, I know myself, and from what I'm hearing from my peers here, it's kind of hard to figure out what that leap is. Like, what's the next thing between the policy, because we could have the policy. So I've been thinking about it almost like, forgive the analogy if it doesn't come out right. There was a time when there were no fire extinguishers in schools. There was a time when there was not a policy to have regular fire drills and, you know, keep people safe. And then somebody created a system, and then that system got replicated. And so, and now we just have an expectation that our administration is going to have a book, and that's what they do, and here's the list of the things they do, and in case there's a fire, this is what they do. And so I'm trying to think of it in terms of, what is that template? What is that framework? And what should we as a board expect from our administrators to get from our administrators of what that book looks like? You know, so we'll have the policies, but I also think that, you know, there's how those policies are enacted. We are also responsible for making sure to review and approve that those kind of overarching sort of procedures and make sure the system is actually in place and meeting the policies. And so I think that's where, if it's not this gentleman, somebody could come in and really help us, because that's, I think, to me, that's where the gap is. Like, I have no idea how to do that. I don't imagine anybody really does. And I imagine our administrators have a pretty good idea, but let's get somebody who has expertise in it, like real expertise, and has implemented the fire drill in other places so that they can bring it in here. That's kind of where I'm thinking.
Thanks. Alec?
Yeah, no, I think that was a good point on Teresa's part. And I would actually dial it back just even a little bit more. I think there's probably a deconstruction phase. Because, you know, the truth is I don't believe any of us would be able to go into the environment, certainly the structural environment, and truly assess where we fall short. And maybe it is bringing somebody into the district and looking at the language of our manuals and looking at, you know, what are those places where, you know, it might look overt to those who are very sensitive to this subject, whereas for folks like ourselves, not much is apparent. So, you know, I think there really is a need to truly assess, you know, what those gaps are and what a plan of action might look like. And, you know, and just to extend it one step further, you know, Caitlin, you had mentioned that the district are already doing some trainings, whether it's the teachers, maybe it's the administration and staff, but we have no idea what it is that they're training on. And it would probably be a good idea to kind of get a sense of what that is and what the desired outcome is going to be.
Great. Bridget, you want to speak to that?
Sure, I can see that the board might be interested in yet further dialogue, but if you look back to my prior board report at the bottom, I included some anti-racism resources. And in those resources, I gave you all of the information on the trainings, including a folder of all of the materials that Rebecca Haslam, who is working with our staff, that would be all of our staff, provided. So that might be some also very interesting reading for you all.
Tari, thanks, Bridget.
I think it's exciting to think about how the board might be able to support changes at the grassroots level, but I don't think that it should be the board's job necessarily to figure out what those changes should be. It seems to me that there are, like, for example, if we know that the staff throughout the district are working on an ongoing basis to do some training around anti-racism. And I think that by the end of that time, many people in the district who are really working with kids and really are on the front lines will have some ideas of changes that they think the district could make. So actually, I do like Teresa's analogy of the fire extinguishers. At some point, somebody realized we need some fire extinguishers and we need them in every building. And in fact, we need them in every classroom. Well, we need the school board to pay for those fire extinguishers. So I don't think it was the job of the school board to say, we can see there's a problem, you need fire extinguishers in every room. But it was the job of the school board to figure out how to pay for something that the people who were working in the classrooms knew that they needed, or were running the schools knew they needed. So I feel like I don't want to have us hire somebody to sort of do this investigative work, at least not right now. I think we should let this play out a little bit, and then we should encourage and look for either money or time, and we know that time is money, for the people who are already doing this work to ask for what they need to do it better, to make recommendations for changes, and then we could respond to that. And that's the way that we kind of do our 30,000 foot thing, but we also support meaningful change at the grassroots level, or the ground floor level.
Teresa?
I just want to react to Tari's comments. Tari, I totally agree that it's great to have that organic and be built up. My question is, I don't know what my expectations of the administration should be. Like when they say, okay, here is the plan, I have no idea, is that a good plan or a bad plan? You know, it's just a plan. We have no way of like the tools. I don't feel like this board has the tools to evaluate conciseness, the comprehensiveness of it. And I feel like those exist. And so like, why would we reinvent the wheel? And so I would like to have somebody help us figure out, you know, what that would include. Like, what does a good plan include? Like, what are the table stakes here? What are kind of the bells and whistles? So that would be the only thing that I do agree with how it should be created from your point of view. It's just like, as the people who are overseeing it and responsible for kind of approving the overall implementation of it, you know, I would like to be better educated in what we should expect from that plan.
So what I'm hearing overall this evening is certainly ongoing interest in outside support for our learning and our decision-making, and some interest in defining goals and outcomes for board level work in this area. I am happy to follow up and share some of our conversation with Hal and hear about a few ideas he might have and bring those back in November. It does sound like people are interested in some additional time, and that could be someone like Hal coming to a board meeting and going through some decisions or some goal setting process with us. But I think this is a conversation that needs to continue. And I think it would be wise to have that consulting person at the table with us. So that's what I would suggest going forward. And if you have other thoughts, why don't you share those with me between now and the 6th, when we'll be defining our next board packet. I'm good. Okay, thanks. Next up, we have communications, which I think this week will be our board recap. Any volunteers? Lisa, thank you. And anyone to do a quick edit and review? Thanks, Tari. We also now, as I indicated, have a Front Porch Forum account. So Shannon Wisdom will be able to post this when ready on all of the Front Porch Forum from the HUUSD. So that is a new addition. Thank you very much. And finally, our consent agenda. I'd be looking for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Great. I think I heard a few voices. Are there any objections to tonight's consent agenda? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain, Caitlin.
Got it, Teresa. Otherwise, that will carry. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
All those in favor?
All right.
All right. Be well, everyone. Thank you again. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.